Good evening. I'm David Watts Jr. and welcome to this month's Town Administrators Report. With me is our Town Administrator, Steve Maio. Steve,
David, how are you? Great.
We survived annual town meeting in
Yes.
record time.
Yeah, we did it in one night. I think we had a bet on that, did we? Maybe we didn't.
I was saying 2 nights.
Yeah.
I was saying 2 nights. We did it in 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
So, and also with us is our town engineer, Bill Renault. Bill, welcome.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
And tell us, if you would, a little bit about, what the town engineer does and what the engineering division is at DPW.
Sure. So we're responsible for the construction of all of the work within the town's right of way. So most of our flat infrastructure, so roads, sidewalks. We also do drainage, sewer, water. Our group has currently 4 engineers, 3 of which are professional engineers. We also have a GIS administrator that manages our documents and our files, record plans, that type of thing. Besides, the infrastructure stuff, we're also responsible for some of our environmental permitting that we need to do as a town. And we also manage, what else would we manage? I would say we also manage bridges. If we're replacing a bridge, we would manage those types of projects as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Like the Hopkins Street Bridge project that was going on?
Not that one, because that's a state-owned bridge, but the the Water Street Bridge replacement that happened at the Saugus line, that was a project that we managed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we have an upcoming bridge on Water Street that we'll be looking at soon.
And, looking at the website, 88 miles of town-maintained roadways, and these are the public ways.
Those are the public ways. We have another 12, 13 or so private ways that we do minor maintenance on at times. But folks can, if they live on a private way, can request a betterment to be charged and have the town actually do the work to replace it. So, so that's another alternative, another vehicle for folks that live on private ways that could use a little bit of service.
Some of those private ways can be...
A little hairy at times.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Definitely.
You brought with you a presentation that you showed at town meeting Monday night.
No, this would have been a few years ago. So back at the 2021 town meeting, we went after a $10 million bond to construct and improve our roadway network over a 4-year cycle. So we're in year 3 of that right now. Obviously, COVID had some impacts on that, and I can discuss a little bit of why that happened and as part of the PowerPoint. But it's a pretty hefty program. We've been plugging away at it now for 3 years. We're about to issue our bid for our year 3 contract right now. So it's this is one of our bigger programs that we manage as part of the engineering group.
And the road bond was kind of was kicked around for a while. Between the town council and the finance committee, and really it's because, and this is a shout out to the state actually, Chapter 90, which is money from the state that goes to cities and towns to for roadway improvements or construction, has not kept pace at all. I mean,
with costs.
With costs. I think that's the understatement of the year.
Oh, big time, big time.
So we could not just handle all of these projects within just Chapter 90 money, and it also would be a real burden on the tax levy if you paid as you go on it. So it was a big ask of the community to approve a $10 million bond, which they did, and you're seeing the fruition now. And I think this summer you're going to see a lot of the work done that our town engineer Bill Renault will get into. But this was a lot of work by a lot of people, a lot of thought process over the last few years, because it had to fit in our budget at the same time.
Right.
So
that was a lot of conversations with the finance committee and what have you, and here we are. And I think Bill will go into his great PowerPoint and talk about all the work and all the traffic he's going to cause over the next few months. But that's okay.
Yes, I might not be a popular man in town, probably by the end of the summer. But
luckily they don't do tar and feathers anymore.
Thank goodness. All right, so let me jump in. So just kind of taking it up a level, our the program goals of the road program really is to develop a systematic approach to managing our 88-mile network, right? So, we're trying to request the funding, to be consistent and plan so that, our funding folks in town, Steve and, the finance committee can, plan for the work that we have upcoming. So one of the main things that we do is we actually coordinate these road program projects with utility work, whether it's planned by, the municipal gas and light, whether it's our own water and sewer group, or National Grid and Eversource, that large project that just came through. And then we also are looking at ways if we can improve the drainage within the roadway, if there's a flooding problem or a constant puddling problem that is a nuisance to the neighbors. Sidewalks that are in disrepair, we try to, accommodate those at the same time. Make safety enhancements when it makes sense. That could be teeing up an intersection. That could be installing, maybe a new roundabout or some bump outs to shorten a crossing so that folks can have an easier way to get across the street. So those are different strategies and things that we'll implement, and we'll evaluate that as part of our design as we're looking at it. So if I jump to the next one. And this was kind of the big slide that we presented as part of the 2021 bond. But it talks about how we develop our road program. So one of the things we do is we start off with a townwide pavement condition inventory. So there's a couple different terms that folks use. The current consultant the consultant we were using uses a term road surface rating. Pavement condition index is more of the term within the industry. And it basically gives you a 1 to 100 score of what the road condition is. That ends up being a point that's on the curve that's on the screen. So as we start off, after we just pave it, it's in really, really good shape, so it doesn't deteriorate quickly. But then over time, you can see the curve starts to steepen, and that's kind of the critical point where we need to make decisions on the type of road. So if we defer the reconstruction of that road, it becomes a much more expensive endeavor and requires us to go through and actually reclaim the street where we grind the road down into the gravel below, put 2 new layers of asphalt on. Obviously much larger cost. The goal is to try to get it at the mill and overlay level. So the mill and overlay is what you see when you're on the highway. So when they grind the road down, it leaves it down, has the grooves, and then they pave the wearing course surface on the top. So that's what we're trying to do. Unfortunately, some of our roads and the lack of investment over the years has caused a lot of those roads to be in that reclaim range. So unfortunately, those do cost more money, and we don't get to stretch our dollars as much. So,
And these are the roads that Wakefield citizens are complaining a lot about.
sure, yeah,
Because there was a period of time when maintenance wasn't done.
right. Yeah, so if you figure that we're doing about 2.5 million in the borrowing money plus our Chapter 90 money, which is about 680,000 or so, combine that into a little north of 3 million per year worth of dollars. What we were doing before was using the Chapter 90 money and maybe $200,000 as an annual article or an annual. I think that was in the capital plan consistently, maybe, and that wasn't every year. So obviously there was a shortfall of funding, and that's what's caused the roads to get to the state that they're in. So we kind of look at it as a network, and we develop a strategy to get to what we call the state of good repair. So the goal is to get our entire network to have an average PCI of 80 PCI for the town. So that's the good state of good repair. Currently, we're probably sitting in the 70s. Some communities are in the 60s, but it is possible to get up to the 80s. That's the part when you'll start seeing the roads are in good shape and you're not having as many complaints.
Right.
We can get the arterials and collectors done, and then it's more of the side streets that people live on. But we still are doing the side streets at the same time because sometimes we may only have a couple $100,000 left after we plan out our roads. Still need to do a side street that will fit within that $200,000 budget. So the way we develop the program is we have these treatment bands that are shown. So if you look at the blue section, that's when we first just pave a street, right? So that's probably the first few years, I would say probably about the first 5. In general, we're trying not to do much to it. Hopefully it stayed together. Sometimes we can see a little bit of cracking that may happen. Sometimes that would slide us into the routine maintenance situation. So that's crack sealing. That is maybe a large slurry seal that we do across the whole entire surface. So smaller smaller investments, those are, in the couple of dollars per square foot type of range, right? Then we start getting into preventative maintenance. So those types of streets are the ones where the majority of our road looks pretty good, but we have a couple of areas where it may be a utility patch or something that's in it that's failed, and that makes the rideability poor. Or it may be an area where that just has an isolated spot that has, that's sort of, deteriorated quicker than the rest of the roadway. So we'll do isolated patching and programs like that. Sometimes we'll actually even look at an opportunity to do an overlay. So we do a thin overlay on the road to give it some life and maybe add 10 to 15 years, kind of push down when we would need to do the real major, rehabilitation. So,
And if I can jump in, Bill mentioned utilities.
Yes.
So there is nothing worse for a roadway than a utility cut.
yes.
So that is what shortens the life of that roadway more than anything else, probably in the world.
Yes.
Other than an earthquake or a water break. But a utility
water
cut.
break would
Water
do it,
break is
yes.
bad.
Yeah, that's bad.
But a utility cut, so that's why when Bill mentioned in the beginning that, we're following the MLD, we're following
Right.
our own utility work, water, sewer, and we're following electric, gas. So that's why, it's and I know it is very disconcerting or impatience on the part of the taxpayer, and I get it, but we don't want to do it and then have 2 years later the electric company come through and say, hey, this was on our list,
Right.
for routine, and that there's nothing that just is wasting taxpayer money.
Well,
basically.
and that's what
So-
happened several years ago with Greenwood Avenue, where I live. The light and gas company was changing the gas lines along Greenwood Avenue from low pressure to high pressure
Right.
lines. They did whatever else needed to be done, and then redid the street and the sidewalks.
Right. Makes
So,
much better sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, much better plan. So we're meeting with Gas and Light routinely, upwards of 5-6 times a year, where we just talk about our capital plans, because these things do adjust and they change over time.
Right.
There may be a new priority. There may be a new water main break that happens, and we say, well, this water main, this is break number 7. We're going to actually get after this.
Green Street.
That would be a good one.
Green
Yes,
Street's had 2 breaks in
Or a
a
gas
year and a half.
gas leak shows.
Yeah.
Two big ones, and unfortunately, that's the last one's really bad timing because we, as part of our water tank replacement bond that we got a couple years ago, we were planning to replace that water main, but it unfortunately just, the timing of the design of that water tank, and that's something that obviously is out of my wheelhouse, and something that we bring a consultant in to handle that design and all the geotech to hold that thing up. But that's it's just these things do happen, and you have to adjust priorities on the fly, and
Right.
so we give you lists at times. We'll show you some of those tonight. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it stays that way, because there may be another issue that has to, juggle it. Typically, it's going to stay pretty close to what this looks like. You may see a street or two that has to get deferred a year to allow, the utility work to catch up, that
Right.
type of thing.
Right.
So anyway, so getting into the mill and overlay pieces, so that's as they're starting to slide down, and then our major rehabilitations is when we have to, reclaim and put our 2 new layers of asphalt.
And that's what happened on Pleasant Street.
That is exactly what
Hadn't
happened.
been
Yep. In forever.
decades.
Yep,
Right.
decades. And, we had some water main work. We had some gas work that happened there. Typically, if we're seeing multiple utilities, that's something I want to do because we don't have any natural road left. So as Steve mentioned, utility cuts are a real problem for roadways. If you have 3 of them, obviously you don't really have much of a road left, and that whole system that works together is just not working together anymore.
Well,
So-
and that's the case with Montrose Avenue, Salem Street.
Broadway is a great example.
All part of
Yeah.
the National Grid project.
Yep, some of those, we have 3 utilities that have been cut through, so Salem's
Yeah.
a good example of that.
Yeah.
So there was a gas line that was done, previously. National Grid came through, they did their project, and now we're doing water main. So obviously trying to stay ahead, we have to get the water main done. There's we have a history of leaks, but we also have undersized sections of it that need to be upgraded to provide better service and water quality for the water customers. So when we get our lists of projects, so what ends up happening, each of these bands, become different types of projects. So I get a budget for that, each type of project, and I have my master list of all these projects, and then we have to prioritize, right? So what we do is we develop what we call a benefit value index, and it essentially is just a ratio of project cost and use. So we use traffic counts, up-to-date traffic data, and build that into the model, and then that tells us which ones. So obviously it does prioritize arterials and collectors a little bit more than your side streets,
Right.
but we still have to get to the side street. It also looks at the overall condition of it too. So it's not just it's not just use to cost. It also is including condition, drivability, all that stuff. So that all combines into, essentially a ranking system that we use. And then what we'll do is we'll apply our engineering judgment to it with, projects that we know we have coming up, whether it's utility stuff, whether it is, if you have a street that may not come up as a higher priority than another street in the same neighborhood, but we know it's going to be there in 2 years, well, we're going to do that street while we're there. So we try to lump them together for our contractors in the same area. So you'll see on some of these, we're working right now kind of in the kind of between Main Street and Vernon Street. So there's been a bunch of those streets that are done. It's done for a couple reasons. One, because our contractor is all working within that same area. But we have a series of streets that were all probably paved in the same time frame, right?
Right.
So then they all start to deteriorate in the same schedule, and it's really difficult to have a resident on one street say, "Well, my street looks worse than the one you just paved. Why aren't you doing my street?" And and I get a lot of those phone calls. So
Yeah.
which is okay. I mean, that's you have to advocate for your street, and I get that. So
Sure.
So basically, that once we get our selection and we prioritize them, then we develop a program and figure out how that fits into the budget, right? So again, we have about a little north of $3 million each year to go through and do that. So from there, we develop our plan and develop maps, do our outreach to folks, and let everybody know the work that we're doing, the type of work and the scope. And we meet with you. Typically we like to do morning meetings if you're on a plan that we've designed. We'll get to essentially a 75% design level. We'll go to the neighbors and say, folks, this is what we're looking to do. What are we missing? Is there something that you would like to see different?
Right.
And we usually get a decent turnout. We try to do it before folks are off to work and handle that as an on-site meeting so that, while you're on the street where they can point to the problem. So instead of someone saying, hey, in front of my house is terrible. Well, that's great. What does that mean? And what are you seeing? And are we planning to already fix that type of thing? So that's why we like to do them in on site with folks and talk about it. So that's kind of the way we develop the process. I'm starting off here with the next slide is stuff that we completed back in 2022. So we were able to complete last year, believe it or not, 3.3 miles of road. And these are a lot of side roads currently. Because we had existing curbing and we had things that were in good shape that we were able to get to those streets. We had to defer a ton of work last year because of supply chain issues. So our granite curb typically is something that would be a 2-week lead time, and that turned into about an 8 to 9 month lead time.
Wow.
Which we were not expecting. And that was, kind of a COVID hangover type situation. And, there was issues with their just the employees that were working at the quarries to get the work done. So, so fast forward to this year, we move on to basically our plan for our remaining work. So we have right now a good 2 miles of remaining work that will be done this year. With the streets that are shown, so Cordis, Wave, Lowell Street. So we'll be on an arterial milling and filling all of that road from Salem to Dexter. And then we also have Dexter to Salem included as well. Pearl Street, Bryan Street, Park Street, Byron Ave, and Albion Street. All of those are planned right now for work that's already in a contract and has already been awarded. And basically, these were all just waiting on curb to arrive to be able to construct it with the curbing that was needed for the project.
Okay, but just to clarify, because a section of Albion Street was done last year between Main and North Avenue.
It was. This is the section that's by the town line that was part of the National Grid project.
Oh, okay.
Yep, so we had to let that happen. We also, for any utility work, we always, one thing that we do, which might be, most folks probably don't understand why we're doing that, is we always wait 1 year from when the utility work has happened to when we actually pave. So we want to go through one freeze-thaw cycle to let those trenches settle and they will move considerably. So sometimes we have to do some more work with the trenches to kind of beef them up a little bit before we can do the work that we have planned. So,
Right.
yeah.
Now, with the national grid work, which has affected a number of streets.
Oh, yeah.
Am I right in saying that they're paying a certain amount of that
Yep.
work, having dug up the street for their new project?
Yeah. So what ended up happening? So when the at the time the Board of Selectmen, they go through a process to allow that utility to be put in a street. There's a private utilities have to
Right.
get a grant of location from the Board of Selectmen. So they went through that process. That was prior to me being here. I think I started right after that was probably completed within maybe 3 or 4 months of that. So we started the kickoff meetings and discussing it. As we got through the project, we started seeing the condition of some of these trenches, and I recognized pretty quickly that we had a need for other utility work. As I got up to speed here in town,
Right.
we started some other programs, our water main replacement program being one, a better coordination with gas and light being probably the second biggest thing, and realized that there was a need for different types of treatments than what was included. So they were supposed to go and mill and overlay all of the streets. Unfortunately, that wasn't going to be the type of repair that was needed on many of the streets. So Salem Street was a good example. Broadway, sections of Broadway is a good example. So, road, we just didn't expect the road to hold together to be able to do those treatments. So we worked with them to come up with a plan to take essentially a mitigation payment for that instead. One of the other important pieces is anytime that we do a roadway and we pave a street, we're required by the federal ADA requirements to put in curb ramps. So you see us doing that with any of our projects at all the intersections.
Yes.
Right. So folks within wheelchairs, mobility impaired, vision impaired folks can get around.
Right.
So that wasn't included as any part of that project, but that's something that we have to do. So that would have been a cost to the town to have to take that on. So we rolled that cost into the project, as well as some sidewalk repairs that needed to be reconstructed.
Right.
And we were to get additional, essentially what would have been, I want to say about a $650,000 payment, escalated up to over $900,000. So it ended up being a benefit for the town for sure to get this project done. Included some funds for some additional sidewalks in the ADA ramps. So it ended up being a win for us. So now we're moving forward. Half of that road is all, in a contract. So those numbers are set. We're working on the other ones right now. Pavement escalation hasn't been as high as some of the other pieces. So curbing has been a big one. I keep coming back to that. But to install curbing today as opposed to 2 years ago is
Right.
3 times the cost. So something that you wouldn't have expected to jump, but the labor costs have gone essentially through the roof for that type of work. So
How much of that is due to COVID?
well, that's a good question. I guess, would you say that the 10% of inflation that we saw last year was because of COVID, or was that because of other policies? I don't know if I know the answer to that, but
Yeah.
I'm not an economist, I guess. But I think it depends on how you look at it, I think. Yeah.
I think the other item is, and I'm going to say this for our engineering and DPW department, from a quality standpoint, because I've gone and looked at some of the other towns that
Right.
got the power line came through, where the utility company did it themselves versus the quality I see when our people are. We're going out to bid, and we have really more of we can really hold the contractor's feet to the fire a little bit better. It's night and day. So you're going to see a much better quality road at the end of the day, including the amenities that Bill talked about. So it really was a win-win. I think,
Yes, yeah,
for the
definitely,
town.
definitely. I mean, again, we're looking at it more holistically. So any of the other things that the town needs,
Yep.
for on these streets, or what we've identified, or what the neighbors have asked for example, right? Any of those types of things, we're doing that type of stuff. So so basically, that's the existing 2022 contract has about 2 miles, like I mentioned. And then our current plan that we're in design phase right now with is the 2023 contract. So we're getting this out a little later than I'd like, but we're planning to be out to bid within the next week.
Yep.
So we'll finish up design over May here, and then we'll be bidding. We'll be doing a bid opening in June, hopefully starting by July. We have another 3 miles of streets this year that we're looking to do. That
Okay.
we're able to do within the. So some years we have 3 miles, some years we have 5 miles. It all depends on the type of treatments that we're doing. So we do have a few reclaims in this, more related to the utility works that we have, the utility work we have going on. So. Other years we have more mill and overlays. We can stretch our dollar more, and we're going to try to do that on
Sure.
other years.
Sure.
So our planned streets for this year: Quarter Street, Daniel Road, Broadway, Salem Street. We have Cottage Terrace, Thorndike Road, Vernon Street, Jennifer Road, Fairlane Road, Longbow Road, and Lowell Street. So pretty hefty on our arterials and collectors. So that'll help. So you're going to see. After these 5 miles of road are done in this year, in this construction season, you're going to see a major difference in the drivability around town. So this will be the year that you start to see, I would say, that bond decision that town meeting came to really come into fruition. So,
Yeah, because, Salem Street, for instance, has been qualitative really bad for a while now.
Yes.
Because of all the work that's been going on there.
yeah,
And it's been a challenge to drive certain cars down that road.
I would tend to agree with you, to say the least. So that's this year's contract. Looking at next year's contract, so we start that planning. The planning phase kind of goes concurrently as the design phase is going. So different engineers in the group are doing different tasks. So this is stuff we're doing now. Is we're looking at pavement coring. We're looking at getting ground survey to be able to design the road. Fix drainage, that type of thing. Be able to put the road back the way we want it to be put back. And then we move into design phase somewhere towards the late fall, early winter timeframe. So most of the folks, we typically are ending construction season in November, and then we basically shift gears by December to move into the design for the next year's program. So for the plan in 2024, we're looking at tentative streets now, because again, these things may shift due to status of utilities or budgeting, depending how the budgets come out over the next couple of years. If we're seeing larger escalations, sometimes things need to obviously drop off. So
Right.
So 4 miles of roads next year is what we'll be doing. The list is on there. Pretty long. I won't go through it all, but we do have gas work on a couple of them. So we need them to stay ahead of us. I have water main that we're looking to do as well. So hopefully we
Right.
can stay ahead of those streets as well. So that's kind of the main pieces for all of our projects. I'll put a plug to our interactive construction viewer. So this is one of our coolest things I think that we have. This is something that I've been trying to create before I came here in when I came here from Concord. Something I was trying to start over there and was able to come into fruition here, which is
This is on
great.
the town website?
Yep, so this is on the front page of our town website. You can
Yep.
click on one of the larger links towards the bottom. It talks about our interactive construction viewer. So that'll show all streets that are going on in town, all the 3 phases. So we have a planning phase, we have our design phase, and we have our construction phase. Let you know any street that's on there, what the type of project's going to be. We have water main projects, sewer projects, whatever we're going to be doing, we sling up to there. That is our most up-to-date information. So as you click on any of those streets in the interactive viewer, a little box will pop
Right.
up, tells you the person in my division that is handling that project. And then you can click on for more information about the project. And so on the slide, you can see an example of basically what we do. We provide background on the scope that we're going to be doing, how we develop our roads program, a little bit information about basically what I've talked about today. And then, the engineer that's designing it, who you want to reach out to if you have questions or comments. So if you're watching this at home, you can click on that QR code and you can bring you right up to our interactive construction viewer. And, what we do is we update that weekly. So during construction schedules change by the week, essentially. So we try to do a couple week look ahead. If we have the ability to go longer, we include that. So as information comes out, we sling it up to there. So I think that's it's a great tool for folks for outreach and to understand what's going on in your neighborhood. And then eventually, I think what we're going to be looking to as a future phase is to incorporate kind of a mailing list, like an email blast list. So for the streets individually, as we're updating these you would get an email to say, hey, this has been updated, go to the website. So so that's the next phase, but there's some logistics on that. So I'm hoping to see if I can get that done within this year. If not, it would definitely be part of 2024.
And I think that's one of the things, and I know we're going over time, but I think this is a subject that needs to be covered, which we haven't done prior. You know, having information like this available to the townspeople didn't exist before. So it was always, what's happening? I don't know, watch the item. You know,
Or call the office,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Call DPW,
yeah.
right? That's
Yeah.
that was happening.
But having a tool like this, people can actually see what's going on. I would think it would also help with driving around town, people going, oh yeah, this is gonna be worked on, I'll go a different route than I normally go.
That's the goal. Yes, the goal.
Yeah.
And then we also do some news and notices through our communications manager as well. So as we're starting streets, if we're going to be detouring or something that's going to happen like that, that gets put through, another email blast. So if you're not signed up for news and notices, you should
Yep.
definitely do that because you'll get some traffic information as well as construction information.
One other area I want to cover before we wrap, and that is with the amount of apartments and condo building that's going on in this town currently.
Sure.
Okay, how is that affecting what your department does and the larger issue of streets and roads?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, so it's kind of funny you say that. So, I'm actually on a ZBA myself in my own hometown too, and and being here and through the industry, every traffic report that you receive from any any developer's engineer, traffic engineer, says that there's absolutely no impact for this project on any town road. And I've read that, I think, in every single one. I've not found one that says, we have a real impact here, folks. You need to spend some money, or we need to spend money for you here. So,
Yeah.
so one of the things that I do as part of our review is that we require a mitigation payment for townwide infrastructure improvements. Typically, I look towards signals. So that's something that we're focusing on over the next year and a half, will be signals. And we're identifying a few of them for upgrades. Ideally, we like to use some newer technology where we're going to have some adaptive signal like we have on Salem by the highway.
Yep.
That actually looks at the traffic and it essentially has algorithms that run through and move the traffic faster. So if you're queuing more in one section, it will let more people through, that type of thing. So it's a lot smarter than rather just a timing-based signal. So that's something that we're looking at. That's one way we do it. I'm very hard on the developers, I hate to say, but for off-site improvements. So we have a lot of off-site improvements. That can be sidewalk improvements, bicycle accommodations, that type of thing. So we're going through right now and finalizing a bike and ped plan that will be presented in June to the town council for adoption. Public meeting will be early June to address comments that we heard from the public. But that'll give a series of projects and areas that we're looking to identify for alternative means of transportation. So so that's something that we're looking at as the developers come in. They can also contribute to making one of these improvements on one of our roads, so the tax base doesn't have to pay for it.
Right.
So that's how we do it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much.
And we do appreciate the strained patience of the public, and I do understand it's strained
Yes.
on the roads. And there'll be a lot of roads done this summer, and I think that we will be moving to the next concern or through the phase of speeding will be the next issue.
Yes.
Because as the roads are smoother, people go a little faster.
Greenwood Avenue is an absolute horror show right now. Yeah, it absolutely is, and especially with all the kids in the neighborhood. So, and that may be another show in and of itself.
Maybe.
Yeah. So, Bill, thank you very much.
I appreciate
for
the
coming.
time.
Hopefully, we'll have you on again for an update down the road.
Oh, I'd be happy to come anytime. It was fun.
Steve?
So he and his staff do a great job. I'm going to take 1 second at the end here. We talked about borrowing for some bonds on the road today.
Yep.
Part of the borrowing process, and we've borrowed for the Galvin School, we borrowed for the Walton School. We're going out, starting the process again for the high school borrowing.
Yep.
And, borrowing is, our monthly payment or our mortgage payment is based on the amount we borrow and the rate that we borrow under. And the rate is based upon the town's credit rating.
Yep.
So when you go to get a mortgage on your house, you get a credit rating, and
Right.
supposedly, if your credit rating is better, or it always used to be, you go to lower rate. I don't want to get into that whole discussion that's going on right now. But as far as the town is concerned, we have been a AAA bond town, which is the highest rating
Right.
that you can get for a number of years now. We just went through the latest iteration of this, where we went and we got, it's called a surveillance call with the bond rating agencies. And I'm happy to report the first time publicly that Wakefield maintained its AAA bond rating, and which I'm thrilled about. And one of the comments in the report was, one of the credit factors, including their view of Wakefield, was a conservative and sophisticated management team with well-embedded financial management policies and practices, producing stable operational performance in recent years, leading to a strong financial position that is expected to be sustained. So conservative and sophisticated, I think that means old and crotchety and curmudgeon-y and scarred, but that's our management team anyway. But I'm very grateful for the work of the town council, finance committee, and my staff.
Absolutely.
So that's great news. So thank
Absolutely.
you for giving me that
And it's
second
going to
at the end
help
of
us
the show.
with the projects that are coming down the pike right now.
It's going to have a direct reflect to the taxpayer upon the high school, and borrowing at a lower rate means that our mortgage payment, our bond payment on the high school is lower. And as
Right.
we know, that's a debt exclusion, and that's a direct benefit to the taxpayer. And that's very important. So,
Great
see what
news.
happens. Great news, yeah.
Great news.
We'll go back in front of them again in February. Hopefully I'll report again.
There you go.
Same way.
So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, thank you. Bill, thank you very much. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next month.